Welcome to the Wimbo Worldwide F1 Podcast.
F1 content around the globe.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 4 of the Wimbo Worldwide F1 Podcast. And today I have with me Ahmed baokbah, who is from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, but currently lives in Toronto, Canada. What I know from Ahmed is uh, he's on Twitter a lot, and that's where I met him because I happen to be in his circle. He likes aviation. He has an Instagram page for aviation. He's a writer for um, Mercedes, the Arabic magazine. Well, I think you're better off explaining it yourself. Um, Welcome, Ahmed.
Thank you, and yeah, I actually write for the Mercedes Arabic page magazine, as you mentioned yourself, and I am a content creator for Mina Grand Prix. And yeah, as you mentioned, I do have an Instagram page, all dedicated for aviation, which is Aviation Worldwide, or you can say aviation underscore W underscore W. So basically, these are my passions, which is fighter jets, uh, commercial airlines, and Formula One in one sentence, basically.
Okay, and you say content creator. What content do you create? And like
Uh,
videos or writing
so
or?
I do create videos for Mina Grand Prix. There's sometimes where we have to do a race review and we do a podcast. So the intro, for example, let's say instead of having someone to read out the whole history or basically a review about a certain Grand Prix or a certain circuit, I'll basically just make a video explaining everything in a short 1 minute. So of course, this is for the Arabic fans and Arabic crowd. Now we have an English page, which was the purpose I discussed with our boss in Mina Grand Prix, Rima. She's a very nice lady and very open to many ideas. And I explained to her that if we really wanted to engage with the crowd and we have the word to see what is the meaning of Formula One in the Middle East and Saudi Arabia, we need to have an English page for the fans to engage with us and understand what it means for us in that region.
Okay, well, I'll put links in the description when I post this tomorrow. I'll let it go live at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday, Central European time. And the funny thing about making it go live as a premiere is that you can follow the whole video and then chat. And some of my community
Yes.
they chat along, and it's a lot of fun. 10, 15 people because my page is not, or my channel's not that big. So, how popular is F1 in Saudi Arabia?
Um, it's quite popular to be honest, and I think F1 peaked in Saudi Arabia during the 80s, late 90s, and early 2000s, especially with the Williams Saudia, if you remember, when Williams was sponsored by Saudi Airlines, and we had the famous Williams Fly Saudi sponsor, Formula One team, basically, and it what made it even sweeter that basically KK Rosberg won the championship in that livery, and so yeah, it just was a moment for everyone to be like, wow, we were participating in this, and
Yeah.
the car won, and yeah, early 80s because of Ayrton Senna and Alan Prost, and the reason why I even myself got into Formula One, it's basically to say thanks to my mom because she was basically when somebody mentioned Formula One, she would always talk about Ayrton Senna, not about the races or any of that, but she would be like, "Yeah, this guy Ayrton Senna, he's a very good Formula One driver. He's very talented. I don't understand Formula One, but watching him and how he drives, He looks to me like a very talented guy. He knows what he's doing. And basically, she was talking about Artensen in past tense because she says, unfortunately, he passed away. So, and then I was like, who is this Artensen and what is this Formula One? And that's how I got into Formula One myself.
Very nice. Yeah, Ayrton Senna was a legend.
He was, definitely.
I enjoyed the documentary about him and the interviews because he always came across like kind of sad and kind of hurt, And then the stories about him just being in the zone and just always driving fast that made him the legend that he is or was.
He loved
So yeah, I can understand
what he was doing. Exactly.
I understand how you get into Formula One for a person like that. So, who do you root for now? I already know the answer, but my viewers don't.
Well, I root for Mercedes, of course, and for Lewis Hamilton. And many people don't understand my story with how I got to love Mercedes. When I got into Formula One, I was a big Schumacher fan. Michael Schumacher, we're talking. And in early 2000s, I think by 2004, when we got the classic McLaren Mercedes, at that time I was like, I love the look on this car. And because I was young, I didn't know the difference between McLaren and Mercedes. And I thought Mercedes is McLaren that time. And I was already a big fan of the brand, Mercedes as a whole. And when I saw the name of Mercedes on the McLaren, I was like, oh, well, here's the team I'm going to support, but I'm going to stay supporting Michael as a driver, but I'm going to support the Mercedes McLaren as a team because of the name Mercedes. And fast forward toward the future, uh, when Michael Schumacher retired in 2006 and Lewis jumped in 2007, I was like, you know what? Since now Fernando Alonso is the big guy, is the dominant guy, I want to support the underdog, which is Lewis. And out of the magic, the guy was driving well. And yeah, we all know how Lewis started in Formula One. And so, yeah, I kept supporting basically Lewis and McLaren for the fact that they're Mercedes. But when Mercedes joined Formula One, I was like, that's it. That's my proper team right there. That's who I'm supporting.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Um, I I read the book from it's called The Mechanic from Elvis. No, I forgot his name. Well, anyway, he was a mechanic during those days for McLaren, and he was talking about everything that went on in the 2007 2008 McLaren seasons. It's a very good read. I could recommend it.
I will give it a read.
So you've been a fan since 2004 2005.
Since 2002, I would say. Since 2002, I started watching Formula One, and yeah, I was hooked. I think 2002 was actually my proper first season to watch. Like knowing, oh yeah, okay, they're gonna race this Sunday, blah, blah. And then you had the usual 2 week gaps for the races outside of Europe, which is like to Japan and to Brazil, and yeah, and by 2000, and then we got the Bahrain in 2000. I think 2003 we got Bahrain, if I'm not wrong. Was it 2003? It's either 2003 or 2004. One of the two we got Bahrain for the first time in Formula One. And already that moment was already a big moment for basically the entire Arab world that Bahrain is in Formula One. And I remember during those years, Bahrain, they were talking about changing their direction from focusing on oil-based economy toward more a touristic economy. So attracting Formula One toward Bahrain was one of the main plays. And yeah, it's working for them so far.
Oh, that's good to hear. Um, what do you think of the current state of all the races and like for instance the Jeddah track itself? But were you happy that that race came in 2 years ago?
I mean, when I saw, I'll be honest with you, when I heard the news, like when I opened my eyes and I looked in my phone and it says Formula One will race in Saudi Arabia, Jeddah, I had to look twice. It's like, is this a verified account? Is this fake? Is what am I reading? Like, this is my hometown. I need to know if this is true or not. And yeah, it was real. But then I was like, no, I don't want this. When I saw this circuit layout for the first time, I was like, what is this? Like, I was like, out of all the Formula One circuits I've seen in my life, I've never seen a circuit like this. It's basically Monaco on steroids, basically what it looked like. But at the end of the day, it actually delivered. And in general, for the city and for the country itself, uh, the old fan base is already there. Like, there's already a lot of Mercedes fans in Saudi Arabia. There is some Red Bull fans. I would say not Red Bull fans. I would say specifically Max Verstappen fans. This is prior the days of his championship winning run. Um, and then I think the majority is Lewis Hamilton and the Scuderia Ferrari fans. That's the majority fan base all over the country. So yeah, with now Red Bull, it's attracting more young people to basically join them and support them. Judging by the name itself, it can attract basically young market, and that's what's happening in the country.
Yeah, like Red Bull, the drink is very popular.
Yeah,
Um, so that speaks to young people, and then obviously the whole brand is all about stunt flying and
yeah,
everything that's exciting and fast. Red Bull does it. So
and
I can s- I
on top of that, like I forget about this. Like, I noticed that Red Bull is hugely consumed in the market back home. Like, I would see a lot of people drinking a Red Bull than drinking, let's say, a coffee or even a cola. So Red Bull, for a lot of people, Red Bull is the main drink that they want to use. So uh, all I remember is that when Red Bull came in 2022, basically, and they won and dominated. And they didn't dominate in 2022, to be honest, but then they won again in 2023. It was obvious in the crowd who had a bit more support. There was obviously the good old Mercedes and Ferrari fans, but then you can see throughout the young crowd, it's almost everyone supporting Red Bull. Almost, not everyone.
suppose it's because they win a lot as well.
Yeah,
Like new fans always go for the
the
winning
winning
team.
team. Yeah.
Um, so you talk about a content creator. So what do you get? What is it again? What you make? Can I look it up or um,
You can. We have our page right now. It's called Mina Grand Prix, ENG. So, for example, like we just actually started the page yesterday. Our
okay.
official launch was yesterday, literally for the English page, right? So basically, I do video editing myself, and sometimes I even can do picture editing. Limited on the skills, to be honest, but I'm mostly what I'm trying to help in Mina Grand Prix is give the team guidance, help them to give them creative ideas, uh, and focus more on producing content that's gonna attract all of the fan bases, not just one fan base or two fan base, and pretty much like you would need everyone to basically be liking your content, not just one or two, not make priority for one or two, basically. And as you see, unfortunately, these days in Formula One platforms, I'm not talking about like Sky Sports or any of these major platforms, because these platforms they can post whatever they want, even if it's something not the fans would like, but still, at the end of the day, when it's race weekend, you're gonna turn on your TV and you're gonna watch
Yeah.
from their stream. So talking about small content creators, some of them, unfortunately, uh, you can see where they're headed with their, I would say, a bit of a biased opinions. They don't basically post something that is crucially biased toward a driver than another, but you can just simply see it. Like nobody is blind enough now these days to see where is it going. But again, I don't mind that. It is part of the sport. It's not a problem if you want to be biased, let's say toward a driver or another. Uh, it's been like this probably. I think people start to notice this more after 2021. Like you will notice that basically Dutch TV is a bit biased toward Max, of course,
Of
and you
course.
have the British, some of the British platforms are a bit biased toward the British drivers. So
Very
and
much so.
etc. and etc. Uh, so yeah, and then what we're trying to create here is just something to attract a bit of everyone who are not interested in biased opinion. That's what we're trying to go with.
Yeah,
As
but
well,
the
give an idea about our culture and at the same time how our fan base either like or the fan Formula One fans in Saudi Arabia how they anticipate Formula One, either the new generation or this new generation that's been watching Formula, let's say since 2021, for example.
so it's news articles, it's videos with news and information
Podcast.
and podcasts. Talking about podcast, did you hear what happened to the pit stop boys?
Yeah, I heard. Um, I'll be honest with you.
Isn't it crazy that F1 Twitter is that powerful to drop ratings from Apple and Spotify ratings from 4.9 to I think it was 2.2 this morning.
It's honestly, I've never seen. I'm not gonna say I've never seen anything like this on F1 Twitter. We've seen we've seen a fair share of incidents on F1 Twitter, but this one particular, let's be honest. Uh, these lads, they were given an opportunity and a huge chance by Formula One. Like it's a golden egg. They were given a golden egg. Now, I'll give you an
But
example.
do you think
Let
F1 organization was involved in the pit stop boys?
I think they're not particularly 100% involved, but I think even Sky is kind of involved. When I say opportunity, they're giving them opportunity to come to many races. Like here's a ticket, here's an invitation. Come, do your cover up, do your podcast, do whatever you want. Who else? Sky
Well, they
Sport
had
giving
some
them
they had some really interesting guests, like David Croft was there, and
David Croft.
I
Uh,
watched an episode I think last week when Matt and Tommy from P1,
yeah,
formerly known as WTF1, when they were
WTF1.
there. That's the only time I watched them, and I thought they were okay. But
Yeah, I mean, I think they're in the context of the way how they can attract some. Let's say they've done with Felipe Drugovich, they've done with Oscar Piastri, Will Buxton,
yes, he
and
was there too.
yeah, David Croft, and I think was it Sam? Did they have Sam on board with them at one? No, I don't think so. But anyway, my point is they have a golden opportunity that whenever they pick up the phone and ask a team or a driver to be on their podcast, they have the green light. So that's why I say it's a golden egg. Because basically, when the teams, the Formula One teams or the organization does a research, they'll be like, oh, okay, so these guys are somewhat linked to us. Let them go and do a podcast with them. That's something I think many of the Formula One content creators and podcasters dream to have an opportunity like that. And I'm talking
Yeah,
about,
very much.
yeah. The only thing I think what they did is they underappreciated Formula One. They didn't appreciate Formula One enough. And there's one point I agree with them. Football is much larger than Formula One. That's nobody can agree with. Football is the number one sport worldwide. No one can disagree on that. But when you get an opportunity to be in a sport that is hugely growing, one, and it's a selective few people that likes the sport, and selective few people get the chance to be in the sport, you're gonna have to appreciate that opportunity that you are
Yeah,
part of the selective few, and just out of respect, do a bit of research. Let's say about the sport itself, about its legends, about let's say race winners or whatever, anything. Just day by day, you're gonna learn something, and you're gonna have a bit of information that's gonna actually make you respect the sport. Just
yeah.
the way how they
There's only
handled it, yeah.
so long you can do the whole thing like, oh, we don't know this because we haven't watched him that long, because they've been there for over a season now. So you get to a point where certain things you need to know. But in this instance, they were saying that nobody gives a
Yeah,
crap about the racing, to a guy that nearly lost his legs through racing in a deadly accident. So that was a big mistake.
no one gives a crap about racing drivers. I mean, yeah, that one for me, I was like, as you mentioned, like a guy who almost lost his legs through racing, and he watched his friend die
Yeah,
in in Spa. We don't want to go there, but like he has seen all those things, and yeah. So again, that's what I say. You have to do a bit of more research,
yeah.
to
So I
know
can
what.
understand. I can understand where it's coming from, but then uh, it's fascinating to see how the mob, the community, can turn itself against you, and you get cancelled. And me as a small content creator, is something that I need to look at myself as well, because you know um, if I get cancelled, I might even not get started again. You know what I mean? So
I mean,
that's something I need to
look,
keep in mind.
as long you follow the community guideline, you're gonna be in the green,
Yeah,
So that's what I usually do. Look, I sometimes, like, even when I tweet, I know there are people sometimes they would see something and be like, "Oh, I don't like this tweet." But at the end of the day, I just try to keep it in the context of that when people see it, they might just not like it, and that's it, simply. But I'm not the kind of guy who would go pushing, trying my luck pushing for the red line, because you don't want to do that. When you know where the red line is, don't go for it anyway,
yeah.
because at the end of the day,
Is I
it's gonna get you bad.
I when I'm on Twitter, I like to tease a little bit, and sometimes I'm in one of those moods, and then I get pulled into one of these discussion, and then it just goes on and on and on, and then I cut it off. And I think somebody else, that might see it and is like, "Oh my God, that's the same discussion he had last week," because it's always the same topics. Um, so afterwards, I think, why did I do that? But
It's
I'm
okay.
usually
That happens.
pretty harmless.
It's okay. We live and learn at the end of
Yeah.
the day.
So the next current thing was the Sam Bird video. Sam Bird is a Formula E driver, and he was a guest at the Bahrain Grand Prix, and he was talking to a radio DJ on Radio 5, and he talked about how Mercedes had their sim with the hybrid engine running in 2011, and the FIA visited them to ask about how things worked. And then he expressed himself a little bit strange. He said, "Yeah, so we got the FIA to bend the rules somewhat for us." Um, Now, somebody made a TikTok out of that, and that TikTok was picked up by what they call the copy paste channels.
Yeah,
Red Bull Racing news and Ferrari news,
for news.
and
Yeah,
then it sort of exploded all over the place. And then other content creators started giving their opinion about it, saying that it was completely normal that the FIA visited Mercedes 3 years before the regulations were put in, because they didn't have the equipment themselves to do it. So, so what's your opinion on the matter?
again, do your research. Just as we were talking about the pit stop boys, I'm gonna talk about. I'm gonna say the same thing about the Ferrari news and RB Daily. I think that's what they're called. They both posted that and saying it's a Mercedes engineer, former Mercedes engineer, and when everyone went to the podcast itself to listen to it, it was not Mercedes engineer. It was Sam Bird, and we all remember Sam Bird was Mercedes reserve driver, I think, from the period of 2010 until 2012, if I'm not wrong. And yeah, of course, he was pumping lap times on simulator for the team, and I think he got even the chance to drive in the testing of Abu Dhabi 2011, if I'm not wrong. But overall, anyway, that's basically his short history with Mercedes. The other thing is, and he didn't even explain in the video, or sorry, in the podcast, he said, like, we kind of got the FIA to bend the rules for us. The one missing part is, and I discussed this with our friend Blake, and I told him, look, you as a race engineer, you know very well that anything regarding the power unit, there's only selected few people get to have access to it. Not even driver number one, not even driver number two, not even the engineers in the garages, the top tier engineers of the team principal, the team owners. These are the only people who knows every product details about the power unit, let alone a reserve simulator driver. So I don't think he has all the full information about that. But again, look, let's all remember that I forgot who was it, but it said that Mercedes was already working on the hybrid PU since 2007. But Mercedes was working on a four-cylinder power unit. And then came Ferrari and Renault threatened that they would leave Formula One if they make the power unit four-cylinder. It has to be six cylinders, or they're out of Formula One. And as we know, Renault and Ferrari at that time, they were basically I'm not gonna say the big teams, but you can say the last champions of the Formula One, basically, accompanied by McLaren 2008 one driver championships. As for the constructors, just simply went for the constructors went to Renault last time. Then Ferrari was basically taking a bit of their fair share of constructors. So, and then from 2011, as we all remember, the news came out saying that's going to be a six-cylinder hybrid. So it means Ferrari and Renault got what they wanted, the four-cylinder hybrid. Mercedes had their resources and researches. All they had to do is change the entire mapping of the power unit, going from four-cylinder to six-cylinder. They've done their researches on the battery, and you can say the MGUH and MGUK and all the other parts and components. That's going to be added in the power unit, but now they just have to build a six-cylinder power unit. So I would say there was no rule bending. I would say it was more of, since 2011, everyone had their fair start to start building their power unit, because you can say the rules were there for everyone to see how to build. What do you need to build this power unit? Where is your limit by not basically building anything or something illegal? We will say, and yeah. So I don't know. I think maybe some bird just wanted to drop something that's gonna keep the topic hot, but
But
what's
I
done
have
is
an
done already.
I have an admission to make. Um, I was the one that came across that footage of Sambird, and I made a TikTok on it. And usually my videos get about 300 views on TikTok, and
Seriously.
this one got 125k, which I didn't expect. I just thought it was interesting, so that's why I put it on my TikTok account.
Who
Now at the
wrote
same
on it
time,
Mercedes engineer?
sorry.
Who did write on it Mercedes engineer? Mercedes
Oh,
engineer.
well, see, I only got that 30-second clip from another guy, and he said that it was an engineer. And then on my TikTok, somebody already said that's not an engineer, that's Sam Bird.
Sandberg. Oh, okay, got you,
So
got you.
so that's when I corrected it on my TikTok account. But the people that copied it from TikTok
They,
and
they took it as a
put it
Mercedes
on
engine.
Twitter, they didn't correct it. But anyway, at the same time,
Okay.
I was preparing a video about how Mercedes became dominant, and it started in 2007 when Montezemolo, the Ferrari president, had talked to Niki Lauda, who said that they started building that car in 2007. Um, and then the next thing was how much money Mercedes spent on building that engine. Then it was 7 points of sort of uh, Mercedes manipulating and um, uh, working towards the huge dominance they had from 2014 till 2020. And the reason, and this is what everybody forgets, but the reason why I made it is because the politics of Mercedes towards Red Bull has already started. You know, Lewis Hamilton, when he gets overtaken by Max Verstappen, says, "Wow, that's the fastest car I've seen in my whole career." George Russell says things like, "Oh yeah, Red Bull is afraid to show their real speed.
The power.
They're holding back." And then Toto Wolff says the next thing, and I feel very much that Mercedes is already sort of working towards a way to get regulations changed or rules put in for the next season to hamper Red Bull. And I don't think that's fair, seeing how they got to their dominance. And Mercedes fans don't agree with it, but for pretty much 7 years, they Mercedes were allowed to do pretty much what they wanted. So that was the only reason to show the contrast, the sort of bias in Red Bull has three dominant races this season. Last season, they were dominant from, say, the winter break almost to the end, but that's because the only competition they had was Ferrari, and they were hampered by the technical directive to um, to get rid of the porpoising. That hit them really hard because they couldn't run the cars low anymore as they used to do before. So yeah, all in
There's
all,
one.
Red Bull's not that dominant, especially not in 2022. And then this year, yes, they are dominant, but mostly because they did a hell of a job with their car.
I agree with you. Again, look, you only dominate if you build a proper car, and if anybody has to blame, people have to blame themselves. Like, and I used to say this when Mercedes was dominating, and teams like Christian Horner comes out and say, Formula One need to say to form FIA need to save Formula One from this Mercedes dominance, and they should open for us the period to keep working on our power units and blah, blah all that stuff before. And
Are you
in a
talking about
way,
the engine freeze or?
yeah, the engine freeze. Yeah, they need to open the engine freeze and all that. So, but All these things happens when one team dominates and the others are in the back on the back foot. Because like at the end of the day, each team principal have promised their investors and their sponsors something, and they need to get them that something. If it means enter into the politics with the FIA to get things sort
Well,
in a sort in a
that's a
way.
hell of a point you're making, because isn't the previous sponsor of Williams suing Williams uh, because they were promised better results? What was the sponsor 2 years ago from Williams?
Oh, Sofina, not Sofina,
I
no,
think, yeah,
but
or
Sofina.
the next
Hold on,
one,
but hold on,
the next
Sofina.
sponsor.
Sofina is Nicholas Latifi's.
Somebody in chat will say it tomorrow.
Okay. I forgot what's the name of the sponsor, but I know what you. Okay, I know what sponsor you're talking about. It's just really at the top of my head. I forgot it. I'll give you an example. Like it's the same thing basically. How can I say it? Like since we were talking about the sponsors, yeah. So it's the same goes with the Red Bull in 2021 when Pirelli got got the tire issues solved, but then Red Bull came up with an idea saying, "No, you need to cut the floors." If I remember, in 2021,
I
uh,
don't think that was Red Bull's idea. It was Pirelli that needed to get rid of some downforce because they were afraid their tires would pop.
no, Pirelli, they already, I think, in 2021, I think they already came up. They got new tire compounds that's basically gonna fix the issues with tire failures. But anyway, nevertheless, I think one of the teams that was really big supportive of the downforce factor from the floor, it was, I think, even Red Bull. But guess what? Again, it's part of the politics of Formula One, and somehow it did work on their way. Just the same how it worked with or how some the same way almost how Mercedes tried basically thinking that if we raise the floor, that means Red Bull they will not have their speed, and pretty much yeah we're gonna be up there back in the competition. Well, they raised the floor. Red Bull just got faster somehow, and then you have Ferrari got slow, and there's only one driver that Mercedes managed to basically one Red Bull driver that they managed to get their hand on was Perez in every race. So Lewis and George doing their thing, they just basically dwarf the Ferraris and they always catch Perez in any moment of the race. But Max was basically flying in every race at the second part of the season. But yeah, again, look, as I said, every team when they dominate, and I think people should appreciate this because when Ferrari was dominating from 2000 till 2004, uh, we all remember the whole tires politics.
So, but are you saying that I'm a little bit too sensitive when it comes to Red Bull and
I mean, you,
Mercedes doing their politics and yeah,
everyone
because
does their politics
because
in Formula One. Trust me.
I follow F1 since 2015, and
Okay.
every year you learn more and more and more, and I
If
hear
you
that a
go
lot.
back
Like,
to
oh, this
2000,
is how F1 has always been, you know.
if you go back to 2000 until 2004 when Ferrari was dominating, and basically every season was almost it's a Ferrari win guaranteed unless something happens
Hmm.
or they lose out in one or two race because they tune down the power unit because they already wrapped up the championships and there's no reason basically to push. So, and I think coming into 2005, uh, as we remember, there was two tire suppliers in Formula One that time. It was Bridgestone and it was Michelin. So, coming 2005, Ferrari basically, I think they built their whole car around Bridgestone, if I remember correctly, for the 2005 season. But then, with a little bit of course, politics from teams and F1 to make it more exciting, they said no. every team is going to use the same tire compound. Now, everything that Ferrari did to build their 2005 Formula One championship defending car is almost gone in the bin because the tire compounds now that they're going to put
Yeah.
on the car, it's not what the car is built for. And that's how we got the Renault basically.
Yeah.
And,
For 2
and
years.
Formula One got what they wanted, which is to shuffle up the
Yeah.
playing field. And guess what? They got a new championship winning team and a new champion in Formula One, and they stopped Michael dominance. So yeah, and I think this whole politics between Mercedes, Red Bull, even Ferrari could get involved if they have a proper car. It will always be that way.
I looked up the sponsor of Williams. It was Rocket.
Rocket, I know which one. Yeah, okay, Rocket. Yeah, I remember that one.
And they're suing Williams now
So they were
because
with them from
they were
2019.
promised better results than they got.
They were with them from 2019 until 2020, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly. Yeah, those were the seasons. Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's the whole story about the Sam Bird's video. Um, you know, somebody said that I only did it to make a name for myself, but then yeah, every content creator is trying to make a name for himself. But I never put it on TikTok to let it go viral and for people to say, oh, all the titles of Lewis Hamilton are illegitimate, because that's how far people go on Twitter.
You know,
They see this much and they make it this big.
there's one thing I will agree with Lewis when he said the fastest car. I don't think he meant the fastest car in the sentence of one lap compared to the competitors. I think what Lewis meant by is the fastest car on a straight line speed. And I think there is this guys, I forgot their name, Formula Addict. They have a beautiful page on YouTube. I would
Oh,
recommend people.
do they place these videos with these little lines?
Yes,
Is that
yes,
them?
with
Oh, that
yeah.
always looks very, very smooth.
So what they've done is they put a W11 and the RB19, both of them on the Bahrain circuit, comparing their lap time basically. And at the very start of the video, in the main straight, the RB19 was gaining on the W11. Like it gained on the main straight about a tenth of a second. And I was like, you know what? I think Lewis was not lying. Because if we talk about the RB19 with DRS, I don't think I've seen a faster car than that. But of course, then again, W11 was just dwarfing the RB19 in every corner and finished 2 seconds ahead. As well, let's not forget, these cars are 50 kilos heavier than the 2020 and 2021 cars. They are just too heavy for their own sake. But I
Yeah.
think if we talk on straight line speed, I think this is probably we with the fastest cars we're gonna see. All thanks to the downforce as well. I would say the ground effect is gonna help with that.
Yeah. Um, I think the ground effect rules have worked. Especially last year, you saw Leclerc and Max overtaking each other lap after lap and following each other closely. Although I've heard that the FIA made a mistake by allowing um, certain changes to wings that made the wake of the cars pretty
Yeah,
badly again.
yeah, it brought the dirty air back in the play.
So they probably need to do something about that because, yeah,
The
if
whole
cars
the
can,
whole reason behind this regulation is for the cars to follow closely.
yeah,
So if you're gonna hamper that, then there was no reason to start this regulation to begin with.
yeah, that's something you need to. But are you enjoying this season, even if there's no championship fight?
I
Um,
mean,
uh,
to be frank,
like from car number 20 till car number 18, it's very tight.
and I agree with you. The one thing I think that's made the season look, we all came into the season we were like, right, It's Red Bull, obviously. Then it's Mercedes, Ferrari, or Ferrari, Mercedes for P2, P3. And then, yeah, let's put Alpine, McLaren, Aston Martin for P4. But then, boom, out of nowhere, second fastest car is Aston Martin, and made everything look a bit more interesting, if you know what I'm trying to say here. So I think what's making this season more interesting that in three races we've got almost three different results. In terms of
Yeah.
podiums, we already got the same result. We've got a Red Bull 1 2, Red Bull 1 2, except for Australia. We didn't get the Red Bull 1 2. Uh, but I think so far the best race of the season we have seen is the Australian Grand Prix. And when I say the best, it's just for the fact that Mercedes somehow their car worked, and it worked for them very well in Australia. I don't believe this car will keep the same performance in Baku, Azerbaijan. Who knows? It could be good, but it could be bad.
Well,
But
what I've heard from I don't even know where I heard it. I don't know if it was the race or whatever, but there's this phenomenon called negative degradation. So a track that
okay,
gets
okay,
gets rubbered in more, and then a smooth track, and a track that develops getting better and better, and that's why you saw people trying a pit stop right at the start of the race, trying to finish the whole race on one set of tires. Basically, that all didn't happen because we had three red flags. Um, but apparently, Mercedes did so well because the track really suited them. Um, and then
Australia was
if you look forward to Baku, I think that's one of the roughest
yeah.
tracks, one
The
of the worst for degradation.
we all know that Mercedes. We've never seen Mercedes build a Formula One car to compete on street circuits. Like that's always been their thing. Like they don't build it to win Monaco, win Baku, or win um, Singapore. Most of the tracks Formula One races in, it's a purpose-built circuit, and that's where they basically flex their muscles. Again, that Mercedes back then. Now it's going to be just a Mercedes that shows a better performance on. I'm not honestly gonna call Albert Park a purpose-built track, but on the layout and the way it kind of is. It's almost
Yeah.
as Jeddah. Jeddah is not a street circuit. I would never call Jeddah a street circuit because I remember those roads in that area. The only road that is legitimately the same and never changed and is the same as it is coming from the turn 26 down to 27 back to the main street. Those are the only thing that remains from Jeddah Road in that part of the Corniche. That is the actual street layout. Everything else, nothing is the same. Everything has changed. But
Okay.
yeah, in terms of Mercedes, again, or any other Formula One team, I don't know how it is. I just believe that they probably will not be good. But back to the whole season so far after three races. As I said, Australian Grand Prix was good. It's just by the fact that Ferrari was close to the Mercedes and Aston Martin. I believe that if Charles Leclerc was still in the race, we could have seen a better pace out of the Ferrari. Because I think Charles knows how to get the best out of his car. I'm not saying Carlos Sainz is bad, but they're just drivers who goes for higher risk, higher reward. And Carlos is not the kind of guy who wants to push for that because if he makes a mistake, it's just adding up more to his bad CV basically. And like,
No, on raw pace, Leclerc is always shown to be quicker than Sainz.
yeah, that we know. And yeah, and Aston Mercedes, I would say mostly with Lewis, who was the only driver who remained on the track, uh, did very well to basically maintain that gap between him and Alonso. And we all know
Yeah, that
that
was an exciting fight, even though nothing happened.
there will nothing happen. It's just the fact that we all know how Alonso is. He bides his time. He lets you cook your tire, and then he starts
Yeah,
to reel you back.
but
But Lewis
Lewis doesn't.
basically,
Lewis never cooks his tires.
the guy
He only
never
says they're dead, but they're not dead.
he never cooks his tires. He never pushes. Uh, and no matter how hard Alonso tried to push Lewis into a mistake, it just didn't work. And if we think about it, they had a great battle in Bahrain, and I enjoyed every four corners out of it, basically. Because
Yeah,
when I saw how fast Aston Martin, I was like Lewis and George, they have no chance. I mean, I was like, if Lance Stroll with a broken wrist managing to overtake George Russell, I don't think Lewis will have a chance against a full healthy Fernando Alonso in a car better than his. But when I saw Lewis doing the switchback, I think in turn five, and taking the lead back, and they kept both going at it, it was just good to see that
yeah, it was good to see.
how much how close they are to each other, but there was respect. So
See, there's one thing about these seasons being so long, and things can change like that. You know, we could go into Baku, and Red Bull will mess up their setup for some reason, or double mistake in qualifying, whatever, and
yeah,
they might have a really bad race. And then the race after that, the other teams have updates, and they might not. There might easily be three races now where Red Bull doesn't win.
yeah,
And what you saw last year is that Ferrari, the first six races were pretty much the fastest car, um, and then at the end of the season they were nowhere. Aston Martin was the slowest car the first six races, and they were top of the midfield by the last six races. So, these seasons, 23 races, anything can happen over the
you
course
know,
of a season.
yeah. I think to be honest, well, now that you mentioned it, I think last year. So hold on, Ferrari last year won Bahrain, won Australia, and Austria, and that's it. And Mercedes won Brazil. So four races out of 22, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
No, I
I
think
think
Red Bull won 17 races, so we're missing one where another team won. Silverstone, Sainz won in Silverstone.
oh yeah. So Ferrari won in Silverstone and Bahrain, Australia, and Austria. So four races, and then the fifth one was Mercedes. So if we count Ferrari alone, Ferrari could have won Spain easy by a large margin if it wasn't for Charles' power unit.
Oh yes.
So that's one. Uh,
Uh,
Monaco,
France.
Monaco, an easy win.
Yeah.
Monaco,
Starting from pole in
easy.
the wet.
Yeah, it's just the worst thing I've ever seen a team does, honestly, in a long time. In terms of, there was bad strategies. We've seen before bad strategies in Monaco, but to this extent, to throw the lead like that, like I think Charles was at some point, even if he finished the race on his intermediate, by the time they're gonna get so worn out that he doesn't even go. Sorry,
With their slicks.
sorry. He was on full wets. So by the time when they get worn out, they would easily become uh, intermediate, and then you have a red flag. That's easiest change to slicks. So, but just the way how they through the lead and the 1-2 in Monaco, it baffles me a lot. So, I mean, yeah, I think they had at least 6 to 7 races they could have won, but they just threw it. 7 races would have made the championship a bit kinda, make it a little bit spicy coming to the end of the season. Not really close, but yeah, it looks
See,
like there's
I made a prediction video, before testing, and I constantly had Ferrari in P2 with a close battle, a closer battle than last year even, because I thought all Ferrari needs to do is work on their reliability a little bit and their strategy. And then
And
if their
tire
car's a little bit,
degradation.
if the car's a little bit better, then Leclerc and Sainz won't spin that often. That's how simple I was thinking. And then they sacked Binotto, and I like Binotto because he's a very calm and sort of I just like him, you know. Um, and then okay, Vasseur's gonna do it, and he's gonna change things, and they're actually doing worse than last year.
I think the problem is Ferrari is one of we spoke about the pit stop boys throwing a golden egg opportunity. I would say Ferrari now as a Formula One team, they got the golden egg and they just threw it. They had a good car last year, but they just brought worse up. They brought upgrades that basically didn't improve much in the car. It simply just made it almost worse. And when I say worse, I'm talking in the sense of tire degradation. Now, you could have a great car, but if you have bad tire degradation, you don't stand a chance at the end
No.
of the day because your tires they're gonna be dead by the time even probably the second slowest car or the third slowest car probably will catch on to you if they have a better tire management than you. So ever since then, every upgrade they brought, it just simply didn't work. They kept the same philosophy and sell worse tire degradation now than ever. And now they're even slower than both Aston Martin and Mercedes.
Yeah.
Again, in Australia, they were about, I think Carlos Sainz, there was some moments he was about a tenth faster than Lewis. But again, we're talking about driver experience here because driver does matter in the car itself. Lewis and Alonso with their pace, and as much as I love Charles Leclerc, I don't think Charles and Sainz would have caught up to them with um, a tenth difference because they will know how if it's a tenth that's between them, they can gap it or just make it basically even larger or just force them into a mistake or even cook their tires or whatever. You know how Lewis and Alonso thinks in most of these crucial moments. And I think Max Verstappen now is moving more into that category right now, not being too aggressive, not being like when he saw George had a better start than him, he just covered him. He was like, nope, he's going to take the lead anyway. Move to the left to have a better racing line out of turn one and two. Got caught up by Lewis in turn three. He tried to close the gap, but then he tried not to fight it because he knew any damage could cost him basically the win for the race.
Yeah.
So it's almost like as if Max now is wearing Lewis Hamilton's suit, and Lewis Hamilton is wearing Max's suit.
Yeah.
Because back in days, Lewis had a lot to lose if he's gonna fight the second fastest car that he knows he easily has the pace to overtake it. Or
So,
now in this
but
case, it's Max basically knows he has the car with the pace to overtake any car on the grid. He doesn't really have to put a huge fight into it. Just let him go, let him play. I have the pace and I have the car to just catch them on at some point of the race.
I think the most interesting thing to follow this season is every race one by one to see what upgrades they're bringing, to see what works and what doesn't work. And with these cars all being so close together, the slowest car at the minute is Alpha Tauri. But I saw a video the other day about the changes they're making. They could all of a sudden be a car that scores a P10 and a P9 as well. And McLaren had a terrible, terrible, unlucky start of the season, and yeah, they scored double points with some fortune. Um, Alpine, they were pretty much on the pace, but then Gasly drove into both of them. So the every race there's going to be different cars in the top 10, and yeah, uh,
To be honest, And I
There's
think,
plenty to still watch the
yeah,
races for.
yeah. Look, I'm not saying that's it. Don't watch Formula One season because again, if you're coming because you want to see who wins the championship, I'll tell you the championship is wrapped. So the championship, the championship you need to focus on is from P2 downward. That's the only championship you really want to keep an eye on because it's a whole different championship than the championship Red Bull is playing at. So you mentioned AlphaTauri, and I agree with you because I remember Franz Tost at the start of the season. He was when when they did this the testing. Nick DeVries had some comments on the car, and basically it was like this car drives horrible, and he said, Franz Tost he said he told his engineers to listen to Nick because they're like, oh no, what he's new, he doesn't know about our philosophy, blah blah blah. And he said, well, I drove a Mercedes, I drove an Williams, I drove
Aston Martin.
Aston Martin. So driving all
And
three, I
he
know.
knows about a lot about endurance racing as well because he did that. You
Yeah.
know how to set up
So
a car.
so basically, he said he's like when I drove those cars, he's like even the Williams that was the worst at that time last season we're talking. Uh, it still felt drivable. Like you still can like manage to drive it. This you can't. So Francis went back to his engineers, basically telling his engineers they will tell him, "Oh no, we have this great idea of upgrades and everything and philosophy that's gonna work for our car." He said, "But does it work to put us, let's say, even in top six? It doesn't. It's not working. Change that." And that's why you hear now, even AlphaTauri, they fired some of their engineers because I think what Francis was doing that time is basically he's given an an outspoken warning to all his engineers when he's basically talking about this to the media that
Yeah, he
you
said he
gotta
didn't believe them anymore.
yeah he doesn't believe them anymore. Like either you're gonna go with something that is realistic or just go find a different job. Basically, that's what he did.
See, if they start finding pace, then Alfa Romeo is all of a sudden the slowest team. You know, you could see Valtteri Bottas at the bottom.
I don't know what happened to Valtteri honestly. And again, don't get
I
me
think
wrong.
he's just doing other stuff
I
with
think
his Australian girlfriend.
look, I'll be honest with you. Look, I think he's enjoying his time becoming Australian, uh, or he's transforming into an Australian bit by bit. But look, let's be real. His performance at the first three races is a bit worrying. That is not the Valtteri Bottas that we all know. That is not
No.
the Valtteri Bottas we all like. That is a proper Kimi Raikkonen of 2020, 2021 who doesn't give a shit anymore about
Yeah.
Formula One. That's the kind of vibe I'm getting. And the thing is, Bottas is much younger than even Lewis Hamilton. Like when people see Bottas next to Lewis, they think Bottas is old, but Bottas is way younger than Lewis.
I
So
think he's 32, 33
he
max.
has a lot. He has a lot to be in for in Formula One. And if I was
But
Bottas, I think he is maybe biding his time to be with Audi. I think that's what Bottas is biding
yeah,
for.
but isn't Alfa Romeo itself, the team sort of biding its time until Audi is, you know, you know what I mean?
I know what you're saying.
I don't think they're going full blast to score P14, P13, P12 every race. The they're
But
there.
but then
They're
again,
just there to be there.
let's not forget Audi is going to come in 2026. You are 3 years away from that.
Yeah, it's a
I
long
don't
time.
I don't think any sponsor was going to last with you this long if you're going to keep be like, or if you're biding your time until
Yeah,
you sell your team. Then I don't have a point. I don't have a reason why to sponsor you anymore. Why should I sponsor you if if you're really not even trying hard enough to progress this team forward. I mean, I understand the Chinese sponsor is there for Guan Yu Zhou, and I know a lot of people that saying, yeah, both Guan Yu Zhou and Bottas are gonna leave. I don't see a reason why Guan Yu Zhou should leave because the kid is
No, he's doing all right.
improving. He's improving like a season after. He was having a great 2022 until the Silverstone accident happened. Kind of affected him. That is a very hard accident. I'm glad he survived it. For a rookie, that's not how you want to be in a Formula One car in your first
No.
season. Never. And let alone now in 2023, he's just doing phenomenal. And I think the gaps, you can see the gap between him and Bottas. In unless they have something different that trying, maybe they have an upgrade that could solve a bit of their issues and start scoring points. But so far, Bottas is, and I know a lot of people say Nick De Vries, but I'm gonna say Bottas because Nick De Vries at the end of the day, he's a rookie.
Yeah.
He's not in Formula One since 2013, just like Bottas.
Yeah. So, do you have a prediction, like a wild prediction for the 2023 season?
I'm gonna go with Lance Stroll, Daddy's Cash, winning a race. That's what I'm gonna go
Lance
with.
Stroll winning a race.
I mean, listen, looking at what the Aston Martin is doing, which is I like and I appreciate the hard work. And if they really bring a great package and upgrade that could compete for a win,
But
I
it has
don't.
to be a crazy race then with
It
some red
has to be a
flags
crazy
and
race. But so you said a wild. So if I'm gonna
yeah,
go
it's
with
wild. It's
wild,
wild.
I'm going with Lance Stroll winning the race.
Yeah, that would be amazing because it's been a while since we had a new winner. I think the last new winner was Ocon in Hungary.
Yeah. Oh
No,
no, Carlos
oh no,
Sainz. Carlos
Saints,
Sainz.
Saints.
Sainz. Carlos Sainz.
Yeah,
Yeah. In 20. Yeah. In British Grand
last
Prix
year.
last year. Yeah. That's basically our newest. Oh, George Russell in
Oh
Brazil.
yeah,
Don't
George
forget.
Russell, Brazil, of course.
I don't know why we're treating George Russell as
Yeah,
this guy
for some reason, if you're a winner in one of the three big teams, it doesn't really count.
it,
You know,
it,
like Pierre Gasly did it in an Alpha Tauri,
and that's I think more impressive in my
and
opinion because
Ocon did it in an Alpine.
I think that's the best win we've seen, and this is just an opinion. Pierre Gasly win in in the AlphaTauri is as big as Sebastian Vettel win in the Toro Rosso
Yeah,
2008. These are the two major wins we've seen in Formula One in a while because we're talking about a pure proper midfield car winning a race.
yeah.
So yeah, these are the only new winners we got in 4 years, I think. But
So
how about you? Yeah, go
my
ahead. What's your
prediction
prediction?
is a little less wild, but you see how Max Verstappen is sort of moaning about the schedule and that it's getting too hard and that there's too much pressure with double qualifying in sprint weekends and all that. I can see it happening that say three races before the end of the season and he's got the two championships wrapped up, that he has a tournament, a sort of a sim tournament, or there's something going on, um, and he's going to miss a race and he's going to let Daniel Ricciardo drive.
Oh my God, Danny Rick back in a Red Bull.
Yeah.
But how do you think that's
And he's
gonna?
going to beat Perez.
Oh no! If you say that, then poor Perez is. I don't think he's gonna beat Perez because it's gonna take him a while to get used to that car
You
before
know what?
Perez.
You know what I've heard? I've heard that on the sim, Ricciardo is, level with Perez and sometimes even a little quicker. That's what I've heard.
I don't think we've seen the best of Danny Ricciardo in the McLaren.
No,
because nothing of that car suits his driving. And
no.
and since we're speaking about McLaren, I don't understand like how do you go buying a driver or signing a driver like Daniel Ricciardo, and the reason is you want his experience.
Status.
You
Oh,
want
okay.
his experience. You want his cities. You want his talent. You want to use all that in your favor. But then you don't go building a car that could suit his driving. I mean,
Yeah.
the reason why I'm saying that because a lot of people say why he should adapt. Look, when a driver been in Formula One for a very long time and they adapt themselves to a certain driving way, it is hard for them to decide just all of a sudden change their
Well,
driving style.
that's true. So, in the books that I read and the things that I hear, um, like Jensen Button, he has a sort of he likes a really balanced car. So his apex is always different than, for instance, Max, who really likes
He's
a
a
really
smooth
pointy
driver.
car.
He's a
Yes.
smooth driver on the steering wheel.
So so
If you see him.
Jensen Button would not perform in the RB19 in the way it's set up for Max.
Yeah,
That would be too hard for him. And then what I know, and like I don't know much about the technical stuff, so I hear stuff and I try to understand it, but the technical stuff of the technical side of racing itself, I don't know much about it, but what I hear, I remember, um, is that Ricciardo was uh, great at braking. He was
he's a late
the
breaker.
latest of late breakers,
Yeah,
and you see his moves of just diving on the inside and then just yeah, uh, and in McLaren he never had that car to do that, and then in Renault the first year he didn't have it either, and then Renault did everything to sort of move that car into that direction, and then he left. That may have been um, a bigger mistake. Leaving Renault may have been a bigger mistake than leaving Red Bull.
I think I sort of agree with you in there that that leaving Renault kind of hampered him because if he kept showing the great results that he was showing with Renault, he could have probably even had a higher chance to come back to Red Bull or go back to a big team because people will be looking at him like, well, he is still keeping his performance the same.
Yeah.
So should we? But then when he went to McLaren, and what made it even worse that Lando is outperforming him, it's just made it even worse
Yeah.
for him and for his
But then
career.
if you look at all the people that have left Renault or Alpine, Alonso didn't want to drive there anymore. Alain Prost was an advisor. He walked
He
away.
left.
Uh, Piastri, he didn't want to stay there.
A lot of
Um,
people left.
I hear about that Laurent Rossi. He seems to be a bit of a character that not everybody gets along with. I don't want to put it all on him, but yeah, he
I
seems
do
like a
put
pretty dominant guy.
I do put a bit of the blame on Otmar as well,
Of
because
Mars half an hour.
I mean when you have a driver like Fernando Alonso and you have a young blood like
Piastri.
no sorry not Piastri, I'm gonna talk about Ocon.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You need to know how to handle the situation. Just look, take it for example, same as with Lewis and George. Mercedes knows that George Russell is a super hot blood, but they give him, they'd be like, right, George, this is where you can play, you and Lewis. But there are things you don't discuss with a team. Like when we tell you do, you do. And in if you look, for example, I think in Australia, um, the sorry in Bahrain, the first race, I think Lewis was P4 at that time. Yeah, he was P4, and behind him George, and behind him is Fernando Alonso. So George was telling the team, "Tell Lewis to move. I'm faster because I'm being chased by Fernando Alonso." But then that makes no difference. Just Lewis is going to be stuck in your DRS until Alonso overtakes you both, you know? And then the moment when the team told Lewis that George Russell is being attacked by Fernando Alonso, you need to push, he just disappeared at that point. Like, he just pulled it. I think in Saudi the same thing happened. They told him, let Lewis pass you because he's on the mediums, since you everyone at the top is on hards. We want to see if he can catch Alonso. And George basically thought that the 10-second penalty is going to stand, and it didn't stand at the end of the day, and there was no podium for Mercedes. But coming into Australia, despite the fact that I think he was, when he was getting pushed by Lewis, because Max was all over Lewis, he was like, "You guys telling me manners, and I'm being attacked by my teammate." And I forgot who came up on the radio, told him, well, Lewis is having a bit of a situation behind him going on, so I think it's better if you push too, because whatever is behind you too, it's not gonna stop hunting you both. So yeah, I think George, he came to a realization, to a point that, right, I can fight my teammate with respect, of course, no accidents, no trying to cause any problem. When when he's fighting Lewis, he feels a bit softer trying to do that. But when he is actually fighting, let's say, any other car, we see the aggressive side of George, because why, he knew the limit. This is what Otmar lacked in inserting within the team, which is when Alonso and Ocon fights, there should be a massive respect, even if it means leave a massive space for your teammate. At the end of the day, you're protecting your car and his car.
Yeah. But Esteban has never done that for his teammates. Never.
No, no.
You can write books about it.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like Ocon, he had his fair share of stinkers. Take, for example, Hungary. Like, you are literally defending against a teammate who just came out on new set of tires, and they are fresh, and he caught you on the pit exit, and he ended up hampering himself and teammate to Daniel Ricciardo to overtake them both.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I understand why he left Alpine, because he knows, I'd rather be with Lance, because at least if something happened between me and Lance, Lawrence is gonna talk to him.
Yeah.
As
But
for
I also think they showed, Aston Martin showed Alonso. They painted a whole picture of him saying, "We've got Dan Fallows. He's been working on that car for ages now, since he was released from Red Bull, and with this ground effect rules, this is going to work. Then we've got the new factory coming up, the new wind tunnel, big ambitions, and we want a world champion to guide us through the whole process, and that's going to be you." And Alonso says that as well. That he says, Aston Martin is going to win world championships, but I don't know if I'll be there to witness it as a driver. But
yeah,
he's pretty sure that's going to happen. So on that positive note, I think we can, we can say our goodbyes. I thought it was great having you on the show.
thank you.
Yeah, I'll be looking differently at your tweets, and I'll be definitely looking up your website and your Instagram. Is there anything you want to say to the people at home, or?
Well, I just would like to tell everyone, thank you for tuning in. Sorry, we've been talking a lot. We probably damaged your ear from the amount of crap we've been talking. But Wim, thank you very much for having me, and please follow Wim. And yeah, you can follow me at Ahmed underscore baokbah on my main Twitter account.
Yeah, and see, what we do is, if you ever need somebody for a podcast on your end, then you can always ask me. And we have this tiny little circle of content creators, and you know, somebody that's a guest for me can be a guest at Wheel Sports, and then we've got a friend in somebody that writes
India.
for Sportskida, which is pretty much what you're doing, but he's doing it in India. So,
Okay. Thank you. No problem.
but
I would love that.
we'll talk about that later.
We will. We will. Thank you.
So, thanks everybody for watching, and tune in for my next video. Bye bye. Doei doei.